We're always told that automation is the key to a simpler life, right? More efficient work, more reliable systems, all that good stuff. But what if that constant push for simplicity is actually making things way more complicated? Let's dive into this fascinating contradiction.
And this is really the core question we're digging into. We're promised these smooth, error-free experiences, but instead we get tangled up in this mess of complex setups, totally unexpected human behavior, and these huge security holes. It's a paradox that's getting more and more real with every new tool we roll out.
But what's really wild is that this isn't a new problem, not at all. The weird glitches and headaches we deal with in our tech today, turns out someone predicted them with scary accuracy over 4 decades ago.
Yep, way back in 1983, a cognitive psychologist named Bainbridge published this paper called Ironies of Automation. It was basically a warning shot. And today, whether you're a developer wrestling with code, a manager trying to implement a new policy, or just someone messing around with a new AI tool, you are living through the exact ironies she laid out.
So, what is this irony she was talking about? Well, Bainbridge argued that when you automate most of a job, you don't actually get rid of human error. You just change where it happens. You end up creating these new and often much worse ways for things to go wrong. And the kicker? The person who's supposed to jump in during an emergency has lost all the day-to-day practice they need to actually handle it. This quote just nails it. The smarter our systems get, the more they handle 99% of the work on their own. That last 1%, the totally unexpected, the critical failure, becomes entirely dependent on a human who is now out of practice, but more essential than ever before. So let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. Okay, for our first case study, let's head into the world of software development. Developers are always looking for ways to automate the boring parts of their job, like testing and deploying code. And a ton of tools have popped up promising to make this super simple. But have they really? Take GitHub Actions. It's a massively popular tool that's supposed to let developers easily automate their entire workflow with just some simple configuration files. The whole idea is to make life easier and more efficient. But a recent study looked at thousands of projects and found something, well, kind of weird. Instead of one simple automation file, projects were littered with them. C++ projects, for instance, had an average of 4 separate workflow files each, and Java and Python were right behind. The promise of one-click simplicity was turning into a tangled web of complexity. So what's really going on here? A tool designed to reduce work ended up creating more of it. The study found these workflows were often way too complex, they didn't follow best practices, and they just added a huge maintenance headache. Developers were now spending their time fixing the automation that was supposed to be fixing their code. I mean, that's a perfect modern-day irony right there. All right, let's switch gears from code to human psychology. What happens when you automate a decision that used to be made by a person? Like, say, deciding who gets a bonus. A really fascinating experiment looked at this exact question. In one setup, a manager decided on the bonus target after seeing the employee's work. A flexible, human-led process. In the other, that target was set by a rigid, automated system before the work even started. And the results were pretty stunning. When the bonus was handled by the automated system, employee performance was significantly lower. That's right, the tool that was supposed to make things more efficient was actually making people less productive. So what gives? The obvious guess is that people felt the automated system was unfair, or maybe they just didn't trust it. I mean, it makes sense, right? Some cold, rigid algorithm deciding if you get a bonus. But that's not what the study found. It wasn't about fairness or trust at all. The performance drop happened simply because people had different expectations for the automated system. Their whole mental model of how a rigid, preset process works led them to behave differently. It was a subtle, psychological failure, and another perfect irony of automation. And that brings us to the most pressing example today, generative AI. These tools are incredibly powerful, they're super easy for anyone to get their hands on, and that has created a massive and mostly invisible new problem for businesses everywhere. It's a thing called shadow AI. This is what happens when employees who are just trying to be more productive start using AI tools like ChatGPT without any official green light or oversight. And look, they're not trying to be malicious, they're just trying to get their work done faster. So how common is this? Well, a recent Varonis report found that a staggering 98% of employees use unsanctioned apps at work. 98%. This isn't some fringe thing. It's basically what everyone is doing. That personal drive for automation is creating a giant corporate blind spot.
And the risks here are absolutely enormous. An employee might paste sensitive client data or a secret company code into a public AI. That data could then be used to train the model, or it could end up on servers in a totally different country with different privacy laws. All of a sudden, you've got a compliance and security nightmare on your hands. The simple desire for one person's efficiency creates this massive risk for the whole system.
So if just banning these tools doesn't work and the problems are this widespread, what are we supposed to do? Well, the answer isn't to stop progress. It's to manage the irony head-on.
The way forward really seems to have 4 parts. First, you need clear policies, so people know the rules of the road. Second, companies have to offer secure, approved alternatives. If you give people safe tools that actually work, they'll use them. Third, education is absolutely critical, because a lot of employees just don't realize the danger. And finally, you have to back it all up with technical controls, like monitoring tools, to spot when things go off the rails.
Look, at the end of the day, we can't put this genie back in the bottle. Automation and AI are here to stay. The real challenge now is finding that right balance, embracing all the cool innovation while actively managing the inevitable ironies that are going to come along for the ride.
Which leaves us with one last big question. Bainbridge warned us about automating physical jobs and procedures. But today, we're automating cognitive tasks, writing, coding, even making decisions. As our smartest tools start to automate our very thinking, what new and maybe even more profound ironies are waiting for us just around the corner?